Welcome everyone to my Remielle kit overview. Remielle, one of the first original Void Hunters, is set to release during the next patch. In this kit overview, I will go over and explain Remielle's kit and the new LumiFlux Attribute, then go over her signature W engine, possible build options, and teams. Keep in mind that the information in this video is not official and therefore highly subject to change, especially this early on. And without further ado, Remielle is a Void Hunter S-rank LumiFlux Anomaly Agent from the Covenant of Dyot faction. Her core skill enhancement bonus increases base attack and anomaly proficiency. Remielle is quite different from the other Void Hunter and Void Hunter rank agents previously released, as she serves the role of a support and a swap-in DPS. And instead of having an exclusive attribute, which is just a special variant of an existing attribute, Remielle introduces a whole new attribute called LumiFlux. Before explaining what this new attribute does, let's briefly introduce Remielle's kit. Remielle can enter a phase flux when the new feather gauge indicated on her resource bar is full. During this phase flux, Remielle deals damage from off-field, and damage dealt by squad members is increased. Triggering attribute anomalies grants Remielle a Void Radiance, which she can use after exiting the phase flux to deal damage through an enhanced basic attack. Remielle also has multiple buffs: an attack buff that increases with the number of anomaly agents in your squad, increases anomaly build-up rate, and buffs her own days during the phase flux. On its own, the LumiFlux attribute does not really do much. It also does not have a typical build-up to trigger an attribute anomaly effect like other attributes, such as Physical, which triggers Assault, or Ether triggering Corrupted. Remielle will deal Lumen attribute damage, which can undergo mutation to a different attribute based on the attribute of the agent next to Remielle. The mutation effect allows Remielle's Lumen attribute damage to deal damage that counts as the mutated attribute's damage. For example, if Velina takes the slot to the right of Remielle, Remielle can deal damage that counts as wind damage. In this case, the Lumen attribute damage being dealt will also be affected by wind damage boosts, or enemy resistance, or weakness to wind. Instead of building Lumen Anomaly, Remielle applies Lumen build-up points. Up to 4 points can be accumulated. Whenever any squad member applies an anomaly, a Lumen build-up point will be consumed to increase the damage of the anomaly effect by the mutation coefficient. This leads us to Remielle's core skill, in which the mutation coefficient will increase by 0.01% for each point of Remielle's anomaly proficiency. If you have 3 anomaly agents in your squad, the mutation coefficient is additionally increased by 15%. Lumen build-up points can be applied through Remielle's various attacks, such as the last hit of her basic attack applying 1 point. Her X special and chain attack both apply 2 points, but the main way of applying points would be done passively in the phase flux. Each time a Lumen build-up point is consumed to increase an anomaly's damage, a Void Radiance points is granted. Up to 3 points can be stored. These points are used to increase luminized damage dealt by Remielle's ultimate, entrance skill, and enhanced basic attacks. Luminized damage is just a fancy type of damage, which is increased through Void Radiance points scaling with Remielle's anomaly proficiency. To enter the phase flux, Remielle would need to have the full amount of new feather gauge, which is 120 points. It looks like Remielle starts combat with the full amount, but you can also generate points through her basic attacks. To enter the phase flux, you need to first use either her special or X special, the latter of which also applies 2 Lumen build-up points, and it also mentions that she starts with 60 energy in combat. After that, holding the special button with the full amount of new feather gauge will allow her to enter the phase flux, in which you cannot switch into Remielle, and she will attack from off-field and apply Lumen build-up points, while also passively consuming new feather gauge in this stance. While Remielle is in the phase flux, the goal would be to trigger anomalies, consuming the Lumen build-up points to allow the anomalies to deal more damage, and also grant Remielle Void Radiance. squad members' damage is also increased by 16% while this happens. When 3 Void Radiants are accumulated, normal switch in is unlocked. You could also prematurely switch into Remielle by triggering a chain attack. If you switch into Remielle after gaining the 3 Void Radiants, an entrance skill is automatically triggered, which deals luminized damage, increasing with the Void Radiance points, but also importantly not consuming them. If this skill hits a stunned enemy, the enemy's stun duration will also increase by 3 seconds. This skill also mentions that if you use the normal switch-in while the new feather gauge is less than 90, the next instance of enhanced basic attack will be upgraded to a version that deals more luminized damage. This would usually always be the case. If you switch into Remielle during the phase flux using a chain attack, the next instance of enhanced basic attack will also be upgraded. The Decibel's ultimate will also trigger the Luminize effect, and much like the entrance skill, it will also not consume Void Radiance. The enhanced basic attack will consume all Void Radiance, deal luminized damage, and restore the full 120 new feather gauge. Both versions of this enhanced basic attack can be used by holding basic attack with Void Radiance points. And finally, Remielle's faction bonus, which requires another Anomaly Agent, or agent from the same faction, will increase all squad members' attack, with the scale of the buff increasing with the number of Anomaly Agents in the squad, going up to 40% of Remielle's attack for a maximum of 1,600 bonus attack. During the phase flux, Remielle's days will also increase based on the number of Anomaly Agents, going up to 35% increased days. Additionally, if an enemy has a Lumen build-up point, Attribute Anomaly build-up against that enemy is increased by 15%. Overall, aside from having a brand new attribute and many new terminologies, Remielle's kit is actually pretty straightforward. You would start combat by using Remielle's X Special or Special, then follow up by holding the Special button to enter the phase flux, during which Remielle will apply Lumen build-up points and also deal increased days through her faction bonus. With your Anomaly Agents, this is where they would deal damage and trigger attribute anomaly effects, the damage of which can be increased by the mutation coefficient and also grant Void Radiance. With 3 Void Radiance, you would switch into Remielle, trigger the entrance skill, then use her enhanced basic attack to deal damage and consume Void Radiance, and repeat. Moving on to her signature W engine, Poem of the Empty Feather Return. This W engine has the increased base attack of 743 and a substat of 30% attack. As for the effect, Anomaly Proficiency is increased by 96. Triggering a mutation reaction grants a 20% attribute anomaly damage boost and a 30% damage boost to the whole squad, with both effects lasting for 30 seconds. This will very likely be Remielle's best in slot, as it provides a lot of attack and anomaly proficiency, but also buffs squad members' damage. However, other options will probably also be viable, such as other S-rank anomaly W engines, which increase attack and AP, and even A-rank W engines, such as Weeping Gemini, which can provide a lot of anomaly proficiency. As for possible drive disk options, we'll be getting new drive disk sets for back-to-back patches, with one of the new sets, Feathered Fate, likely meant to be used on Remielle. This drive disk set will increase anomaly proficiency by 30 and grant a buff when off-field. When on-field, the buff will last for 15 seconds. The buff increases anomaly proficiency by 50. If the equipper is of the Lumen attribute, attribute anomaly damage dealt is increased by 15%. This is likely going to be Remielle's best option across the different possible teams. And while Remielle could actually use a set like Phaethon's Melody, the bonus 15% ether damage is useful if the Lumen attribute goes through the mutation effect with ether. This can also apply to other drive disk sets, although realistically, Feathered Fate will probably be her best option, as it will also work regardless of exact team comp. As for potential main stats, Remielle's mutation coefficient and Luminize damage both increase with her anomaly proficiency. She also provides an attack buff scaling on her attack, so these are likely going to be the two main stats you would focus on. For your slot 5, you could also run an attribute damage bonus piece based on the attribute of your next agent. However, an attack 5th partition will likely be the more consistent option for all teams. Moreover, an attack disc will also increase Remielle's attack buff, which requires 4,000 attack to gain the maximum 1,600 attack buff with 3 anomaly agents. Instead of regular attribute anomaly buildup, the Lumen attribute builds up in points, so that may result in anomaly mastery not really being useful. And finally, Remielle acts as a support and sub-DPS in anomaly teams. She would usually be paired with 2 other anomaly agents. Having a total of 3 anomaly agents also allows Remielle to increase her maximum attack buff, deal more days, and increase her mutation coefficient. Moreover, you will need 2 other anomaly agents if you want to trigger disorders or vortexes, as there is no Lumen attribute anomaly effect that would disorder with other attribute anomalies. You don't need to specifically have an anomaly agent to trigger anomalies, but it's more so about being able to consistently build up the attribute anomaly like anomaly agents usually do. So you could also run an agent like Nangong Yu, who is an anomaly-oriented stun agent. Such teams could have their uses and potentially be decent. With that said, a common agent to pair with Remielle would likely be Velina. On top of just being able to deal loads of damage, Velina can provide extra days, which, paired with Remielle, could end up stunning enemies pretty quickly. Velina also reduces anomaly build-up res, assisting in triggering anomalies to grant Remielle her Void Radiance. Burnice could also have pretty decent synergy with Remielle due to her off-field fire being applied just by hitting enemies. And the last slot would be either an on-field or off-field anomaly agent, who will deal damage while Remielle is in the phase flux. With Velina, you could use some of the on-field anomaly agents who have decent synergy with the wind attribute, such as Promea, Arya, or the physical anomaly agents, such as Jane, Alice, or Piper. Instead of Velina, you could also run an off-field anomaly, such as Burnice or Vivian, paired with an on-field agent. This could especially be decent for Miyabi, who can definitely work with Velina, but doesn't really have the best synergy with Wind. Overall, Remielle does look like a very decent and flexible support and sub-DPS for pretty much all anomaly agents. Remielle herself does not really have restrictions as to which anomaly agents can work best with her, and the Lumen attribute being able to deal damage based on the next agent in your squad can mean that she works against pretty much all bosses, and you would only have to swap out your anomaly agents to match the enemy's weakness. And that's all from this kit overview. Thank you for making it till the end, and thank you for watching.